We're going to kick it off with a voicemail. Kent, lay it on us.
So my question is related to the lifespan of running backs. What shifted with running backs? I mean, Curtis Martin had a career year at 31 years old. Tiki Barber had a career year at 30. And now it's like if guys are hitting 26 and 27 and still productive, it's surprising. And then along those lines, the way that running backs are used now, where it's just, hey, let's try to get 5 or 6 years out of them, tops, and then move on. Do you think we'll ever see another Hall of Fame running back? I don't know if guys like Derrick Henry or Zeke would be considered for the Hall of Fame, but if not those guys, is there ever going to be another Hall of Fame running back with the way they're used?
Love this question because I think it's a little bit of a twist on a conversation that we've had a lot. This is about running back value. This is about kind of the downstream effects of that conversation about running back value. And two things that I haven't really considered. So I appreciate Eric for calling in and giving us the question. Let's start with this idea of running back longevity. Any thoughts here? I think that there are some broad strokes that he was painting with that we can dig into if you actually look at some of the numbers associated with these guys. But at first blush, what's your reaction to that question?
It was the final part about how many would make the Hall of Fame that actually hit me, and I go, I have not thought about that.
It's great, and so we'll dig into that as well because
we had a lot of great questions, and we started with this, and that like really rattled my brain a little bit because I hadn't thought about the repercussions of that and long term changes how the game is looked at.
Because we've done it for receivers. Where now that we have this glut of receivers, the game has become so pass happy that we have to change what Hall of Fame parameters look like for quarterbacks and pass catchers. Because in another era, Kirk Cousins is going to the Hall of Fame, baby. So we have to change that. But we haven't thought about having to make the same change for running backs on the other side of the coin.
The bar race for those positions, and I feel like the bar is going to lower for the running back position.
It's a great point.
The only comparison I had was pitchers in baseball because they don't start as frequently, and there's more
great idea.
Less like the last time a pitcher is going to win 300 games, like they think that's going to be a really hard feat. I mean, it always was, but even now, that's like my only comparison. And I was looking at who's made the Hall of Fame recently, and like Terrell Davis made it with 3 All-Pro teams, but he also won MVP. And he won 2 Offensive Player of the Year awards.
That's a really good example. Because now you're not going to have Derrick Henry is the one that comes to mind for me. Okay. Derrick Henry right now, if he has 2 more 1,000-yard seasons, he will be 30th all time in rushing yards. There are so many guys ahead of him on that list that are not in the Hall of Fame. Fred Taylor, Steven Jackson, Corey Dillon, LaShawn McCoy, Warwick Dunn, Jamal Lewis, guys that really aren't even that close to getting in. But Derrick Henry has a first-team All-Pro. He has a second-team All-Pro. Those guys, I think there's 1 or 2 All-Pro teams in the group of 6. Fred Taylor made 1 Pro Bowl. So I think that the way we have to shift it is rather than looking at a mass statistics, where are you at in relation to your peers at the position? And I think that if you do that tweak, it still doesn't come up with a huge list, but I think it makes it more possible and creates more avenues for guys to eventually get to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. And accolades is what you're going to have to look at, which is so crazy. And also not only accolades, this is where you got to look at kind of like what the league average was, I guess, and look at how above league average you were and look at total yards as well. Because all these guys are going to be asked, and this is going to be my second point to this question, but I want to focus on this, is these guys are asked outside maybe Derrick Henry to be pass catchers and be on the field. So you're going to look at touches and total yards. That's going to be just as important, where that used to be more of an anomaly. Oh my God, I can't say it.
Anomaly.
I know. That was actually, I know how to say it. It was just 9 a.m. on the West Coast time right now on a Friday. But that was in the 90s. That was more like, ooh, this guy, this guy, Roger Craig and Ricky Waters, they catch a bunch of balls. That they're totally different than the other bruisers. And now that's more like what you need to be a true running back in the NFL right now. Maybe outside Derrick Henry and like Nick Chubb. Outside of that, it's more of a luxury thing. So I know this really got the noodle cooking.
All right, so guys that have retired in the last like 3 or 4 or 5 years that could be Hall of Famers or currently are active players. What does the list look like for you at the position?
Oh my God, who has retired in the last 3, 4, 5 years?
So I have a couple.
Yeah, throw some out there.
Adrian Peterson, 100% is a Hall of Famer.
Oh, 100%.
He's in the top 5 all time. He was
MVP.
a generation-defining player at the position. He was an MVP at running back. He was the last one to do it. I think he probably will be the last one to do it. No brainer, no questions asked. One guy who recently retired that I think you could probably make an argument for is Marshawn Lynch. Okay.
He's
Again,
iconic
player,
Yeah.
Super Bowl winner, 1 first-team All-Pro, 1 second-team All-Pro. He's at like 10,400 yards, which is just ahead of where Derrick Henry would be if he gets those 2,000-yard seasons, so like 30th all-time. But again, played in more of a modern era where there's a little bit less passing. You'd probably make an argument for him. The Pro Bowl All-Pro point I was making before was mostly about Fred Taylor, Steven Jackson, Corey Dillon, work done. LaShawn McCoy has 2 All-Pros. So LaShawn McCoy probably has at least somewhat of an argument. He also has a Super Bowl wins. So those are the 3 guys that I'd probably throw out there. And then, Derrick Henry, if he were to have like 1 or 2 more just outlandish seasons,
bonker years,
he's running for 1,500 yards, he gets another first-team All-Pro, then I think he gets a little bit closer to this generation-defining back in the kind of the post-Adrian Peterson world. But it's really hard to get there because guys have shorter lifespans. They don't get as many opportunities. So the chance to be that best player at your position, even over a 3 or 4 year stretch, you combine that with injuries at the position. It's just more of a moving target. And it's more fleeting.
Yeah, it is. We're going to be looking at who has like 3 All-Pro teams is going to be like the bar.
And it should be.
Which seems at first you were like, that's so low. And then you look and you're like, well, that's the peaks now. And that's how it goes. I mean, you look year in, year out. Josh Jacobs just had a huge year, kind of good player, but out of nowhere. And then that's how it is. It feels like every year there's gonna be a new guy with the crown.
Jonathan Taylor did it the year before. And Jonathan Taylor, I think, can have a bounce back year this year, obviously, but it's so up and down year to year. They don't have those long, prolonged periods of dominance and success. The first part of the question I wanted to hint at a little bit because I think it's an interesting point. I'll just say most running backs, even over the last 20 or so years, they do start to decline around age 30. Yeah, I mean, you look Curtis Martin, he played
really.
Even like Daniel Tomlinson did. He started to go down after that age. Emmitt Smith did starting to go down after that age, like a little bit of a cliff. Curtis Martin played 1 more season after that season that he had his career year. Tiki Barber, that year that Eric referenced, that was his last year in the league. So for the most part, the cliff has been relatively stable for a little while. I think what's changed is our demands on what we need the running game to be. So here's the example I would throw out. In 2010, Steven Jackson rushed for 1,240 yards at age 27. He was the Rams' primary running back, high volume running back for each of the next 2 years. In that 2010 season, when he rushed for 1,241 yards, his EPA per rush and success rate were worse than Zeke's this year. But he had 2 more years as the Rams' primary running back because
the Falcons won.
And then he kept playing.
Yeah.
Because what we expected out of the position where you could just be a grinder and efficiency and explosiveness was not nearly at the same premium, I think teams were willing to live with that a little bit more than they are now that the league is completely exploded. That 2010 season, the year after that, that's when the league changes for good.